So I'd like to say welcome to everybody. Before I sort of do my introductions, I think I'll just turn it over to our Chief Commissioner, Celeste Haldane, and allow you, Celeste, to do a welcoming and your opening comments.
Hi, Chika, Angela, and Lydia. Thank you for starting us out in such a good way and grounding this important discussion that we will be having today. Um, Want to acknowledge all the different territories that we are joining each and every one of us from. So again, giving respect and acknowledge the territory that I am currently on, as well as many of you are on your traditional territory. So again, it's always good to be strengthened through the roots that we have in our connections to our land and our culture, our people, our families, and our ancestors. So I appreciate that. Um, Angela, I really want to acknowledge and thank you for your leadership and putting this virtual roundtable together. This is such a incredibly timely and important discussion and topic as those are moving forward through ratification. I'm glad that we're actually able to record, so we'll be able to utilize this information as a go forward for the commission, but also for others that are participating. And really want to thank you and acknowledge you for the work that you've done over the last 3 terms. And we know that the announcement came out yesterday with regards to Georgia Abbott coming in when you're stepping off the commission, but really wanted to thank you for your leadership, your insights, your advice, your perspective, and the guidance that you have given the Treaty Commission, but also the tables. And again, this is a testament to your commitment and deep dedication to the negotiations process, but more importantly, also the implementation process. So I want to raise my hands to you and thank you. I also want to thank the team that has been extremely busy putting and pulling everything together. We could not do this without you. So getting the ratification guide out as our first draft. So I really want to acknowledge the team and all the hard work that you have put in to get us here today. Always, I'm always deeply appreciative and very grateful for your tenacity, your the fact that you continue to strive and push, and I push you just as much as I possibly can. And I really wanted to thank you for stepping up and for always for being there to provide the support that the commission needs and the tables need. So again, raise my hands to all of you. And thank you, everyone, Heichka, for the participants and those that are willing to share their knowledge and expertise with us today. So again, raising my hands. I know today is going to be an excellent discussion. We have great panelists, excellent advice and insights into the processes that are underway. And with that, I wanted to kick it off and hand it back to our facilitator, Angela, that will guide us through the day. I'll be popping sort of in and out. I do have to travel today, but I really do look forward to the discussions that I'm able to capture, as well as, again, having an archive of this very important roundtable. So, Haichka.
Thank you very much, Celeste. Appreciate your words and introduction, and everyone's looking forward, I'm sure, to diving into the ratification guide. I was feeling when we were putting this together like it's a bit late. Comox is moving into your ratification process. March the 8th, I believe, is the date. Kittilas is coming up on April 8th, and Kitsap-Kalem coming up in the fall, I believe. Perhaps not a date set yet, but want to start by issuing extreme congratulations to all of your teams at those tables for that tremendous accomplishment in getting to that initialing and bringing your teams together. Some of us were talking about how long ago our ratification processes were. You know, going back to 2007 is a long time, and a lot has changed since then. So I really want to thank our presenters that are coming in today. We've got some presenters that were involved back when, and we've got some presenters that are involved in current day. And I think it's going to provide some really good perspective here. And as Chief Commissioner said, a great opportunity to have this recorded and to be made available to others as well. So thank you all for coming and joining, for listening in, and for our tremendous presenters who every one of you stepped up and said yes as soon as I asked. And I really, really appreciate that. So without further ado, I want to get in. We're starting a little bit late, so I want to start getting into our first panel. So we're starting off with, I didn't include a lot of detail in the agenda because I wanted our presenters to feel comfortable to go where they want to. They've all come with unique experience. Our first panel is going to be Mark Stevenson, Melissa Quocksister, and Roy Francis, and I'm going to introduce them all, and then just so that they can flow from one to the other. I couldn't not have Mark Stevenson open today. Most of you know Mark. His bio is in the kit as well as everybody else's, and I'm going to introduce everybody off the cuff because most of these people are my good friends and colleagues. Mark has been pivotal in the three ratifications that are coming up now, the three tables there, has led a lot of the new initiatives that have come up. Most of you know him. He's usually in the background or at a table making change. And Mark, really, really appreciate that you're making time to open us up today with your presentation, and looking forward to hearing that. Following Mark, we'll hear from Melissa Quocksister, who is from the Comox Nation as well, coming up for their ratification on March the 8th. I've known Melissa for many, many years, communicator extraordinaire. She's worked in many, many communities for many years. She's been a council member for her own community, private consultant. She's worked with other tables such as Tama, who's joining us today as well. Great to have you here, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing on very short notice to attend. I appreciate that. The third member on today's panel is Roy Francis from the Tla'amin Nation. Most of you will know Roy as well. He was the chief negotiator for the Tla'amin Nation as they came to their ratification of their treaty, continued to work with his nation, continues to work with his nation and others. Tremendous amount of experience in bringing that to closure. A really great story to tell in terms of the Tla'amin experience. And again, Roy, thank you for joining and always being so willing to share your story.
I wanted to first say that, all the credit that we get is only because we follow our leaders and they give us instructions. I really want to acknowledge Comox, Kitsilus, Kitsum Kalam, and Metlakatla as well for giving me the privilege of working with them and following their instructions. I should mention that I live just south of the Malahat in the Malahat First Nation territory, and I want to acknowledge that as well. Culturally a Métis, but also a Treaty 6 beneficiary so for tax purposes, I'm an Indian, but have always identified as Métis. Was a constitutional advisor for the Privy Council for many years, head of Ontario Native Affairs Legal Services, chief negotiator for about 5 years for British Columbia. But my practice is mainly in treaty negotiations. So next slide, please. I guess in terms of the messages for ratification, I think it's really, really crucial that we continue to honor the vision of our leaders. I started off working with the Tsimshian Tribal Council. At that time, there were 9 leaders, the president, the chief negotiator, Gerald Wesley, 7 community negotiators. 5 of those leaders have passed away. And I've recently lost my good friend, Mel Bevan. Mel Bevans, who was chief negotiator for Kitsilus, his last living act, the last thing he did was initial the chief negotiator's understanding. That was his last act. He died several hours later. Chief Don Roberts, who we also lost from Kitsum Kalam, he was so sick, we couldn't have the signing, the initialing ceremony, the chief negotiator's understanding, or the initialing of the treaty. We couldn't have a celebration in a hall. We had the ministers were driven up to his home, and he signed in his home because, of course, he was suffering from cancer. For Comox, I call them the 3 wise ones who started the treaty process: Ernie Hardy, Stu Hardy, and Barb Mitchell. Ernie and Stu are no longer with us. Stu's last words, his last words were, "Let's get this treaty done." So I really wanted to start off by saying we need to honor their vision, the visions of our leaders, and connect emotionally with them because they're the ones who have taken us this far. And we just need to continue to honor that vision. Next slide, please. So this is Chief Don Roberts, a month or so before he passed away, initialing the treaty, and gaunt, but still regal, and it's just a very powerful image of him initialing, and with the two ministers behind him. Next slide, please. So we need to be proud of what we've accomplished, really proud. I'm one of the negotiators for the group is called the Robinson-Huron Treaty Group. We just settled the largest claim in Canadian history. It was $10 billion. So everybody says to me, gee whiz, Mark, why didn't you get us $10 billion? Well, it's easy to say that, but you have to look at the facts and the context. There are 35,000 Robinson-Huron Treaty beneficiaries. And the treaties in British Columbia, if you just look at the simple assets, they are by far richer than the Robinson-Huron Treaty settlement. And they did not get co-management. They don't have the enforcement provisions that we have, including being able to set up a court. They don't have self-government. They're not under the new funding that we benefit from as a result of the Collaborative Fiscal Policy Initiative. And they're trying to negotiate something that they call periodic renewal, and they're trying to negotiate future revenue sharing. So we need to, when we hear about other settlements, we need to put it into context, because what we have done is very powerful. We've fundamentally changed what treaties look like, and we need to be proud of that. And that is a key message that we need to get out there into the communities. Next slide, please. So treaties are now living agreements. This has been a huge battle for us. They're no longer final agreements. And this is something that was consistently a message that we heard from all community members. And most of us know now that we have an orderly process. And what that means is that if the courts find that there's other rights that we didn't include, well, we can include them. And then we have the periodic renewal, which for, if there are unforeseen changes resulting in unforeseen circumstances, changes in federal, provincial law, policy, innovations, and other agreement, we can revisit that. In the Comox Treaty, we have the ability to revisit the release language during the first periodic renewal, because we didn't like that. And we also have the ability to include in our treaty innovative arrangements as the result of the recognition of Aboriginal title by the Crown, i.e. the Haida Agreement. So when we open up for periodic renewal, we will be looking at those things for changes. And periodic renewal, of course, requires good faith negotiations and binding arbitration. And the binding arbiter can impose punitive damages if parties aren't negotiating in good faith. So treaties are living agreements, and we have the tools now to really bring them alive, bring them to life. And that's an extremely important message for community members when you're ratifying. Next slide, please. Freedom from the Indian Act is another slogan that we need to emphasize. I mean, you guys all know this. I'm just going to mention just a couple of these. But 1920, every child was required to go to residential school. Status was removed in 1876 from those Indians who received a degree. Indians were banned in 1884, rather, from doing ceremonies, including the potlatch. 1927, what we're doing was illegal, raising money and doing land claims. And then 1951, Indian women who married white men lost their status. So we need to get, people always ask, what's wrong with the Indian Act? Well, if you go back into history, it's pretty clear what's wrong with the Indian Act. And those provisions, some of those provisions are still there. Provisions about minister requiring to educate Indian children.
Thank you.
So next slide, please. So we need to also emphasize the importance of culture. And most of us do that anyway. We open our meetings with ceremony and prayer. But there are important cultural aspects in the treaty. There's the place naming. There's the lawmaking. We have lawmaking to protect and promote language and culture. And the treaty, one of the first provisions in the treaty is that there is now a right, a constitutionally protected right to practice your language and your culture. So the Indian Act, they can't do things like they did with the Indian Act years ago, outlawing your language and culture, because you have a treaty. You have a treaty that constitutionally protects that. There's protection of heritage sites, creation of tribal parks, and having traditional components in your constitution, and having your knowledge keepers have a role in there. And in Comox, we're having a settlement trust, and that settlement trust will provide for language and culture training. So it's important that we emphasize the importance of culture in the treaty and the things that we're doing to promote and to protect the language and culture. Next slide. So when we had our vote in 2011, the AIP, the question is very simple. Based on the AIP, do you give us a mandate to conclude treaty negotiations? And at that time, there were rumors everywhere. We were told that people were going to vote against it. The elders were going to vote against it. The hereditary chiefs were going to vote against it. The employees in the office were going to, the treaty team was going to vote against it. Those were the rumors that were out there. And I actually went to Chief Haldane and I asked him to delay the vote. I said, I don't think we're going to win. And he said, Mark, don't be stupid. Just listen to the people. And what Mel would always say, Mel Bevan, my good friend, he would always say, listen to the silent voices, because those are the ones who will decide. In the end, we voted and had a 74% positive vote. But there were a number of concerns that we needed to address, and we promised to address those concerns. Next slide, please. So the concerns that we heard were all the concerns that you've heard. There's no recognition of rights. Treaties need to recognize rights and not extinguishment. Of course, there was the big debate about the tax exemption. In those days, there was no co-management. It was just our land and your land. There was no revenue sharing. Comox now gets an annual $2 million in revenue sharing just from forestry. There was no loan forgiveness. The land and cash values were poor. And we now have a huge chunk of change annually from CERNAC, additional dollars to pay for self-government of $5 million. And of course, treaties are winning living agreements. So we need to celebrate those victories. These are huge victories that some people take for granted now, but they're huge, and we have to celebrate those as part of the ratification process. Next slide, please. So self-government is not an empty slogan. That's another message that we need to get out there. You will have self-government in accordance with your own constitution. It creates a third order of constitutional government. That means they can't take the powers away from you. You're not like a municipality. You make your own laws governed by your people, and you have the tools to enforce your laws, which is a huge issue. Many of the modern treaty nations gave us advice, and the one problem that they had is it became impossible to enforce their own laws because they didn't have the tools. So we got together, of course, with a number of nations, and we did the work that we had to do. And now we know that the treaty requires the police to provide adequate and effective policing. The treaty says they can enforce nation laws subject to the nation allowing that to happen. Creation of courts, our own prosecutors. We have our own peace officers that have the same immunities and protection as peace officers do federal, provincial, municipal peace officers. So that was a huge thing. And there are agreements where we can actually enforce federal and provincial laws as well as our own laws. So self-government is not an empty slogan. Self-government is about enforcing your laws, our laws, and we have that ability now. Next slide, please. We also need to emphasize nation building. I mean, treaties are the highest form of reconciliation between nations. They are. That is just a fact. But they don't solve every problem. They're not perfect tools, but they are about nation building, and it's not a perfect process. It's a difficult process. It takes a lot of work, and there are gonna be failures. There are gonna be bumps in the road, but you have the necessary tools now to do that. Next slide, please. So what did we give up? We didn't give up Indian status. We didn't give up the tax exemption. We didn't give up programs entitlement. We didn't give up any land. In fact, we have much, much more. We have all of the land. Some of it will be shared with our neighbors. Some of it will be shared through co-management agreements, and some of it is exclusive, but we have it all. Didn't give up Aboriginal title. We didn't give up the inherent right to self-government, but we did give up the Indian Act. So we gave up nothing but the Indian Act, and that's a really important message as well. Next slide, please. So how will members benefit? Well, every member under the Comox Treaty, every member will benefit. We have about 350 to 400 members, so there'll be real self-government in which they'll participate in. There's going to be approximately 25 new jobs at least, probably higher to 30, but around, modestly we'll say 25. Values of home will increase, and there will be no property tax. They're property tax exempt if we want them to be. More fish, more land, more economic development opportunities. Increase in annual funding just from CERNAC, just the CERNAC dollars for administrating the government, an increase of $5 million annually. Plus there's a $2 million for revenue sharing. We're giving every member, when they turn 60, $10,000, and we're putting approximately $50 million into a trust fund for education, training, and health. And that's about $2 million annually, we figure, conservatively. So every member will benefit, every single member. It's not just the administration. It's not just those with businesses who can take advantage of the tax exemption, but everybody will benefit. Next slide, please. So this is an important message. Trust the treaty team. We are agents of change. We are the treaty team. And people will naturally resist change. That is natural. There's nothing wrong with that. It's inherent. Canada and British Columbia resisted change, and we fought with them. We fought very hard, and we got the change we were looking for. And with our treaty partners, we've been able to fundamentally change what modern treaties look like. That is a strong message. With our treaty partners, changing what modern treaty looks like. We have done what I refer to as constructive damage to the status quo. We fundamentally changed in a positive way what the status quo is. And we're going to get opposition. We are. There is no doubt. You can't do a treaty without if there's no opposition, it's not good. And there's going to be litigation, and there will be rumors. And now is the time for Comox. Now is the time to listen to the calming voices of the elders and listen to the treaty team. The treaty team knows the facts. Every rumor out there needs to be addressed and is addressed and has been addressed by the Comox treaty team. So trust the treaty team, not the rumors. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, I packed a lot into this, and I hope it's helpful. And again, I'll just repeat the key messages that I think are important in the ratification process. And that's one is, honor the vision of our leaders, and make an emotional connection to their vision. It's really important that there's an emotional connection to their vision. Be proud of what we've accomplished. We have just done a tremendous job. We've fundamentally changed what treaties look like. Treaties are living agreements. That's an important message. They're not final agreements. Freedom from the Indian Act is an important message. And we've got a lot of tools to protect the language and the culture and to build culture into our lawmaking processes. Listen to the silent voices. Listen to the silent voices, because those are the people that will decide. There's always 10 to 15% of loud voices, loud negative voices. That is natural. And, you know, the voices that you need to really pay attention to are the silent voices. Treaties are about nation building. We didn't give up anything except the Indian Act. And that's a really important message. You still have all of your territory, but your exclusive lands are much larger. Then you share some of the territory with your neighbors, and you share some of the territory with the Crown through co-management arrangements, but you didn't give up a square inch. Emphasize benefits to members. That is always a question. What is in it for me? And that's a good question and a fair question. And you have to be able to answer that question in a positive way. And then finally, trust your treaty team and not rumors. There you go. And I hope that's helpful. A lot of information. Yeah.
Very helpful, Mark. Thank you. You really have nailed so many of the key messages that we need to have going forward, and really want to especially thank you by starting your presentation honoring the people that brought us here. All of us in our communities have got people whose legacy we're bringing forward in this process, and I think that that's one of the key issues. You know, no matter what, all of us have had family who have worked hard to get us here. So I really thank you for that. A couple of things, Mark, that just really stood out for me. Starting off with the context piece, I think, and using the Robinson-Huron Treaty, I think is really remarkable, because I think we're facing that a lot now in the province in terms of reconciliation agreements that are being signed, and citizens feeling like, you know, they've been in this process for 35 years and their neighbors are now getting these, you know, what sound like, you know, very high settlements that are coming out. And it's simply not the case when you compare what's come out of treaties versus what's in those agreements, which is really just getting many of those tables to a starting line. So that's a really valuable message. And of course, the living treaty agreement is key. I come from a nation that has been 15 years under the treaty self-government, and we're hoping that people continue to make changes and positive changes in the treaty process and in new agreements, because we all benefit from that. So Comox, Kitsillas, and Kitsim-Kalem will be thinking the same thing, I'm sure, going forward, is cheering on and helping others to be able to continue to improve. So that living agreement piece is just so important. Mark, thank you so much for always stepping up and all the work that you've done. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our next presentation. Melissa Quocksister. I gave a quick introduction of Melissa, and I invite you to add to that, Melissa. I know that young as you are, you've been involved in this process for a very, very long time. You've got some very special people who have committed you to the passion that you have for this process. So I welcome and open the floor to you to maybe talk about some of your work that you've been doing, especially on the ground. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Angela. And thank you for the invitation here. I guess I'll start by, I want to thank Lydia Whitsom for the wonderful opening to really make us feel good in starting the day. I want to acknowledge my friends and family on the call. A lot of familiar faces. Haven't seen some of you in a long time. Some of you are very close family members. I have a mother-in-law on here somewhere. And I want to, before I get started on my presentation, I want to acknowledge my teams. I am here on, and I'll be talking about my work with both Comox and Kitsim-Kalem. And I want to acknowledge Jen and Julie, who are on the call here today. who work very, very hard next to me, and they make my job pretty easy up there. So I want to acknowledge them. I did ask them to co-present to me, and it was an overwhelming no, thank you. So I will be presenting on their behalf as well. As well as my Quocksister team. Obviously, I have Mark and Ashley on here. We'll have Coral on here later, and Tiffany as well, who's, I believe she's on. So, all of this I'm going to talk about. I can't do this without them. I am only one person, and I just really want to strongly acknowledge my teams at this point. So thanks for that. A little bit about myself as I pull up my presentation here. My name is Melissa Quocksister, obviously, and I am from Comox. We have a couple of people who were instrumental in getting the Comox Treaty started, and that was Ernie Hardy and Stu Hardy. And I apologize if I sound a little out of sorts. It was an emotional opening. As most of you know, maybe know, my grandfather Ernie just passed recently, and right in the middle of this campaign, which made it really hard. But at the same time, it's actually helped us in giving us that drive to keep going and work hard and fulfill the vision that he had. As mentioned, Melissa Quocksister from Quocksister Consulting on Comox and Kitsim-Kalem. So just a little overview. We are in the middle of a campaign for Comox. We are voting March 8th. We are 16 days away from our vote. 30 years, and we're down to 16 days. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot going on. So I tried to take all my thoughts and put them into something simple that I can just talk about. So there's a few things that I had to do to put together this strategy. A lot of things needed to be considered, and there's a lot going on, and that's why we have these teams we have, obviously. So when we were setting this up, we had to think about the timing of the vote. When do we set the vote date? How much time do we need to reach out to members, etc.? So Comox wanted to start earlier than later. We had hoped to start our campaigning in early summer last year. However, there was different delays and things like that, and we ended up not being able to initial until July. And then we thought, that's okay, we can jump in, start in August. Turns out that we weren't quite ready to do that either. We were waiting on a few resources, and we didn't have the enrollment and eligibility wasn't quite ready to go, and we didn't want to start our campaign until we had the enrollment and eligibility ready to go, assuming that when we started talking to people that they would want to enroll right away, and we were right. So what we aimed for was to do a soft launch in our September meeting, and we did so. We let everybody know we are hiring a home visit team. We got training coming up, all that stuff. And then for the next 2.5 months, we actually used that time to hire and train and make sure all our materials were ready, all those things. And our actual launch for the vote was November 2nd. So November 2nd is when we officially started that campaign. So that gave us about 4.5 months, 3 months even taking, or 3.5 months maybe taking out Christmas time. We also had an election, a band council election in there as well, early January. So there was a lot going on. And we considered that this might not be the right time. But then, if we didn't do it, who's to say that it would have been the right time if we waited too? So we took the leap and we decided, let's do it. It was a tight time frame, but thinking about how many people we have and the experience we had in AIP, I thought that, I think we could do this. And we are. We're right where we're supposed to be. It is working. The timing was good. So when you're thinking about setting a vote date and lining up these strategies, the timing, is it too soon or is it too late, right? It depends on a lot of things, especially your population, where your people are, how many people participate, what's your goal for enrollment, things like that are to be considered when looking at when to set your vote date. Teamwork. So I already acknowledged my team, of course, but when you're getting into this, make sure you have your team ready and build your strategies with. So when we took on our home visit team in Comox, we went through sort of the high level of what we're going to do. We did the training on all the materials. We have an onboarding package that we use for everything, and it's basically the exact same as our home visit package. So that's what we use for our training. And that took about, I think I set it up for 6 weeks, and even that was a little tight. I would have preferred probably an extra 2 weeks on that. Just people's schedules and things like that, trying to make it work. The big difference between when we did this at AIP and when we are doing it now is that we have different tools now, right? So we're able to Zoom, and instead of having to be together all the time. So that opened it up to be able to build our teams outside of Comox. So at AIP, our home visit team was all people who lived in Comox in the community. This time around, the majority of our team lived outside of Comox, and not just like in the valley. We have a representative that lives in Victoria. We have 2 in Vancouver, and then we have ourselves who cover the rest of the island, as well as we have one member who lives in Montreal, and she is also on the home visit team, and she takes care of all the Zoom meetings for the people outside of our concentration areas. So we've set it up in a way where most people have a direct contact wherever you are. You have a home visit team rep if you need to, as well as the treaty team's always here as well. The treaty team itself, there's myself, Ashley, Tiffany, Christy, Coral. There's 5 of us basically that do the groundwork, and it's a little overwhelming. There's a lot of work. We're handling it. But in the big picture, we are working every single day right now. We are working long hours every day to get this done. And if we were to do this over, I think we would need to secure somebody to do a little more of the office work and things like that while we're out engaging with members face to face. Resources. So do we have everything set to go? First of all, money. Communications is not cheap. For some reason, forever and a day, there's this sort of dream out there that communications can happen for free or for very cheap, and that is not the case. Communications is expensive. You have to pay for things like websites, and you have to pay for things like materials to be printed and shared, and sometimes you pay for other softwares and things like that. You have to pay for people's times. In some cases you hire professional designers and media people and different things like that. So with your resources, make sure you have enough money to do the work, and be generous and put buffers there, because there's a lot of things that come up in communications, crisis communications, extra things that need to happen. One little example of that is we thought we were going to be the super awesome treaty team who ordered everybody jackets. And when we got the jackets, we realized that they didn't come in Indian sizes. They don't fit anybody. They're all at least one size too small. So we are in the middle of reordering some bigger sizes for them. Software and tech, there's a lot of free things that are available to us too, that'll talk about, there's social media. Social media is huge. There's all kinds of social media. Use those resources, find where your people are and go to them through those. Software, you want to have your proper programs, right? You want to make sure you have a proper design program, or use something cheap and easy like Canva, like I am doing right now, but also considering your databases and things like that when it comes to E&E, and you're collecting information, you're collecting questions and answers, you're trying to track how many people you've seen, how they were communicated with, all those things. So you're going to need some software for that. And whatever is your preference, Comox had a custom-made database for this specifically, and it's working well for us right now. But others use Kits and Calum uses a different system, and it works just as well. So whatever works best for you, try and find something user-friendly that isn't tied necessarily to one person either. You never know when somebody's going to get abducted by aliens, and you have to be able to access their software as well. So you want to develop your information materials, of course. In Comox, we very much focus on trying to meet all the needs of being able to absorb information. So we have obviously written materials, we have visual materials, we have auditory materials, and others like that. So we have a package of written materials. Looking at it right now, there's probably about 20 pieces in there, 15, 20 pieces in there, 5 brochures, 4 summaries, 2 specialty booklets, some promotional materials with members messaging in it, and a lands atlas. So we have these big packages that we go out and talk to people with. We also have an app that we use, and that has all of our materials on it. We have a YouTube channel, we have podcasts, we have lots of written materials, and we house them all on the app rather than in Comox in particular. We house them on the app as well as Kids and Calum does. The difference is Kids and Calum also uses their website a lot more than Comox does. Comox does not use the member website as much. We put on the information that's necessary and stuff that addresses the public as well. So develop your package, your home visit package, your communications package. Make sure you have everything covered. The way we built those out is in response to the repeated questions we were hearing, like, what are we going to do with the money? How are we going to be governed? What's the plan for the land? All of those questions, membership, right? All of those really important questions and cornerstones, we have developed materials specifically to answer all those questions. And it works well. I went through a couple of home visits where we just looked at every question that this individual had. I was like, we have a book for that. And I would pull it out and we'd answer. And we thought it was kind of funny because every single question she had was answered in one of those materials, which was really great. And then we have all that ready. You got to get out and hit the ground. You got to communicate and you got to engage. You got to talk to the people. We are talking to the people every single day. We have been talking to people every single day. We are enrolling people every single day in Comox. And it's great to do that. It can be a little nerve-wracking at some points, but I think what my team has been encountering is a lot more unexpected positivity and support. They're grateful for us to be there, to share the information, to answer their questions, and just to reconnect with our people is huge. And that really has been the most rewarding part of this whole process, is sitting down and reconnecting with folks I haven't talked to in a long time for whatever reason, right? Distance, busy, but to sit down and be with our people again, it's really been rewarding. And it's been special. I don't know how else to describe it. Maybe my teammates want to elaborate on that at some point. But in Comox, it's been a great process. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish as a team and as a community so far. And when you're talking to the people, listen and respond. So what are the people talking about? What conversations are being had out there? So we've been having weekly internal meetings in Comox with our team. And my first question to everybody is, what have you heard this week? What are people saying? What are you hearing amongst the staff or out in the community? What did you see on social media? Because if we don't see it or know about it, if somebody else hears and doesn't tell us, then we don't know, we can't respond to it, right? And when we hear something that maybe somebody's wondering or somebody was talking about, we respond to it on a community level. We'll put out a Q&A or a post about it and make sure everybody has access to the information, whether it's a statement or something that addresses what we've heard. And we try to do that because we know not everybody's going to come up right to the treaty team and ask or say something to us necessarily about what they're wondering or what they're thinking. And then as you're going through, another thing that's really important is to set goals, weekly targets. This is a lot of work and you really got to take it one step at a time or you're going to overwhelm yourself. So every week we also have a debrief with the home visit team. We spend half an hour to an hour. We sit down. What have you done this week? Where are you? What's your problems? Anything that we can help with? Where do you need support? What was good? What can we celebrate and cheer each other on for? Things like that. And every week, particularly with the teams that have bigger lists, like in Vancouver and the North Island, it's setting goals. Can you reach 6 people this week? Try and have 6 home visits, or try to reach 6 members this week, right? Something like that, something manageable and attainable. Our home visit team all have jobs, everyday jobs that they do. They are doing this on their spare time. So, being able to take one step at a time and set achievable goals throughout the week is really important. So I'm going to move on. That's sort of just in a nutshell, if I could. I know I've talked for a while, but in a nutshell, that's kind of what I've gotten in the strategy so far. So I'm just going to go through a couple more slides. So Tla'amin, these are some of the tools that we've been using. We have obviously the website, Tla'amin Treaty website that we have. We have the Tla'amin communications app where you can find all the materials. We have the Tla'amin communications department group on Facebook for members only. And we have an Instagram page for Tla'amin Treaty as well. So those are some of the social media tools that we're using to reach people. This year, we've had 11 community meetings in Terrace, including meetings on the E&E, the land and cash offer, forestry, harvesting, fiscal, and constitution. Tla'amin prefers to do a lot of face-to-face whenever possible. So we do community meetings in concentrated areas outside of Terrace where there is large numbers of Tla'amin people. So we've had this year 18 meetings in Prince Rupert, Vancouver, then Vancouver Island, and Edmonton. This year we've had 3 traditional land tours, but we always ask people to contact. We can set them up if there's anybody coming into town, or if anybody wants to see a particular piece of land, we always tell them to contact us to get on the list, right? And then we've had 3 appreciation barbecues, Canada, BC, the initialing, the joint meeting, and a joint meeting with Celeste as well. So some of the tools and tactics used by Tla'amin team, we have booklets and brochures. They're available on the members only part of the website, the app, and at every meeting there is printouts available. Of course, as mentioned, there's the website and then the Facebook and the other social medias. Mailouts. Julie does a fantastic job of keeping track of where everybody is and trying to keep updated where people are. She's got this fancy color coordinated map that shows all that, and she does mailouts multiple times a year to make sure that nobody misses out on the information. Phone calls. Jen and Julie spend a lot of time actually just on the phone, connecting with people, reminding them about meetings, making sure they have your correct information for mailouts, etc. Community info sessions. So as mentioned, we do the off-reserve tours as well. Those are ongoing. We do those every 3 meetings we have in Terrace. We'll do an update round with the concentration areas outside of Terrace. In Tla'amin, we have monthly meetings for a couple hours at the end of every month, and topics are based on they were based on chapters. Now they're zoning in on things like details of constitution and enrollment and eligibility, things like that. So Tla'amin has done a couple of videos too. They do email reminders. Of course, we have the Hot Communications app and their land tours. So in Comox, the biggest thing we've been doing right now, obviously, is the home visits. So getting in information sessions. So getting ready for that, building our strategies. We include all members whenever possible on and off reserve. As mentioned, we offer training. A lot of teamwork and support. We are there for each other. Me, Ashley, Tiffany, we're very super protective in protecting our home visit team, making sure they're having positive experiences as well, and that their job isn't being too hard, I guess. So a lot of support for each other on the team, in all the teams, really. Written materials, we have brochures, booklets, summaries, as I talked about. Land tours and COMOCs, we do about 2 to 4 a year. Our territory is very large, and our land is spread out throughout the territory. It's not in a concentration area, so it's a little bit harder to do one big continuous land tour. Videos, we do have a YouTube channel. We have tons of videos. I think there's well over 15 videos on there. We do podcasts. You can find the podcasts on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Community meetings and COMOCs. We have quarterly meetings. They are hybrid meetings, so they are all available by Zoom and in person. We often have special guests. We always have presentations, and we always have some sort of activity for feedback to make sure the people are really coming along with us as we do the work and move forward. And of course, we have our communications app, as mentioned, as well. On the communications app and COMOCs, we have all the materials that I had mentioned. We also have a link to the enrollment on there, so people can enroll themselves from the app. And we also have a home visit team tab that is just for the home visit to be able to access different resources, and even sending in invoices directly from the app. So I'm going to go just through a few of these things, an example of what you can find on our bunch of social medias. So of course we have our treaty team. This is one of the posts that went out. Another on our home visit team, which has since changed. Nikki Rempel is no longer on our treaty team. She's now the chief, so I had to fire her. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. But you can't have 2 jobs at once. So she is working hard as chief, and the remainder of our home visit team are working hard to continue to reach people. So we do Q&As. We have templates for them. We just fill in the Q&A. Their templates are based on the different topics. So if it's governance, it's red. If it's lands, it's green, and so on. So on these are the types of posts that we put out regularly, a couple times a week. So how to enroll. There's a couple different ones here. We do updates. This is an old update. Obviously, it looks much different now. The green is well over half the red now. But we put these enrollment updates out weekly for everybody to see where we are in enrollment. It's sort of like a tally. We have videos. This is a video on when, where, and how to vote, which I can show you later, but I know I'm taking up a lot of time here. We have an annual report that we do every year just for the treaty team. We've worked on a number of visuals. So this visual sort of on the bottom right-hand corner, it looks like some water and some canoes. That is our journey. That was our timeline journey to put up on the wall to show people regularly, where we are in the process and how we're taking these steps and what these steps entail. The one beside the annual report up top is sort of our vision of us enacting the future our ancestors envisioned for us. So putting our treaty throughout our territory into action. So in the middle where it says, let's get this treaty done, that's a picture of my grandpa. I went through old podcasts, videos, recordings, and I found quotes from him, from my Uncle Stu, from Fran, got one from Barb. And we made these materials to remind people why we're here and who got us here and what their vision was. We all think it's very important, as Mark had mentioned, that we carry on these visions and remind everybody that this isn't something that we just did today. This has been ongoing. Again, talking about our materials, one of the little specialty booklets we have made, it's a little pocket book. It's really cute. I think it's about 5 by 5 inches, an enrollment and eligibility and ratification booklet. We have tons of booklets like that, our summaries, like the Constitution, treaty summary, our brochures, governance, Q&As. We have 5 Q&A brochures, one for lands, economic development, governance, Constitution, and another one. We've also been working on change management for a few years, and we have a comic about Treaty versus Indian Act and changing from one to the other. On our social media, so I utilize my team and people throughout the community who are really good at this stuff, because I am not too good at social media. So we have a Snapchat group ran by one of our youth who is on the home visit team. Obviously, we have our app, which I've mentioned several times, which you can see on the end here. We have our Instagram page and our treaty campaign page, which get updated daily now. There's a countdown on there of how many days are left. Q&As are being posted daily. Lots of activity on the social medias. So again, we have there's a picture of our Instagram page here. We have, this is our is that Instagram? Yeah. And this is our YouTube page next. You can find Comox First Nation and a number of videos that we had lined up in the playlist there. I just took a screenshot of the Spotify showing, what it looks like on our podcast. And then we have a link tree as well that we post. So that's all the social medias we have that we share with people. And we put the link tree in, the bio of our Instagram and in different places like that, so people can easily find all the social media. So this is an example of what's going out daily on our Instagrams and Facebook. We have branded our Ratification Day with a big celebration we're hoping to have, and every single day you go out and you put these out and you keep going out and talking to people. Keep spreading the message. Those key messages, always have them going out. And then in conclusion, there's lots more I wanted to talk about, but I can't be here all day. So my final thought for all of this is victory requires dedication. And when I say my team is working every single day, we haven't taken days off, and we don't intend to until we get our victory. Because it is that important. It's 30 years of work. We get one kick at the can at this. We need to do it right. We need to be dedicated. We eat, sleep, and breathe this. Our families are in full support of what we're doing. They're allowing us to take the time we need to do the work that we need to do. And it takes a lot. And I don't know how to emphasize that more than I have, but you need to be on the ground, face to face as much as you can, contacting people every spare second that you have. I literally send out emails at 8, 9 at night sometimes because I've spent all day talking to members, it's the key. That's how you're going to get this, is dedication, teamwork, and support. So that's it for me. Sorry I took so long. I do tend to ramble a little bit, but it's so important. And, we really are going to be enacting the vision our ancestors had for us and for our future generations. And it is so, so exciting. So thank you, Imat and Gailkasla.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Amazing presentation and overview of all of the information and work that the teams that you're working with have been doing. I just can't help it every time I see presentations about the kind of communication and engagement that's going on now and the sophistication of the communications tools that communities are using. I just think it's just amazing. And actually, I have to give kudos to our teams 18 years ago that didn't have these tools and actually still ended up with really good results. But it comes from what you said at the end, Melissa, is a dedicated team of people who really, really, really want to get this done. So I appreciate that. Lots of things jumped out at me, those long hours. I remember our teams, we used to joke because we had the full plug literally 24/7 between our teams. Some of us were night owls, some of us were early, some of us were all day long. So yeah, lots and lots of work. I used to say to people, did you get my email? And they would just roll their eyes, like, which one? constantly going. One of the things that really jumped out at me too, Melissa, was the importance of listening to the questions that your citizens have. We built our communication strategy around that. You know, the frequently asked questions that you think people have quite often aren't the frequently asked questions that people actually have. So I think that was a really good reminder that you need to be asking people what you're hearing and responding to what it is that people are hearing. So really appreciated that. And I'm sure there'll be some questions around that great work that's happening on the ground. So thank you, Melissa, as always, for taking the time. Let's move into our next presentation, Roy Francis. I introduced Roy very briefly and high level. Roy's got an amazing amount of history and experience with his own people. He's been chief counselor, he's been chief negotiator, he's been chair of their business boards, he's worked with his nation before and after treaty. I'll allow you, Roy, to continue with any further introduction and on to talk about the Tla'amin experience, which we always really appreciate. The ratification date for Tla'amin was in 2012, and their effective date was 2016. So it's an ongoing journey, as it is for all of us. And I invite you, Roy, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be invited to be part of this discussion. I think one of the memories I have, like looking back at a ratification date, is about 15 years ago. It's been a long time for us. And it kind of just boggles me that we're still like the most recent of our ratified treaties, but it's been such a long time. It's like 15 years. So it kind of makes me think about how fast time marches on. I've heard people speak about honored elders, honored people that aren't with us anymore, that have been so much part of the work. So I think it's always important to treasure those times and those direction that we received from those individuals. It's just so amazing how fast time marches on. Tla'amin, when we're coming to our ratification date, some of the things we did were about inviting speakers from other nations, from other places to come into our community to share their experiences. Collaboration, I remember, being one of the most priceless of tools in preparing for our ratification date. I remember speakers from the Niska coming into our community, speakers from the Manath coming into our community, speakers from Tawasin coming into our community, and sharing information, insights, work that had been done before us. And those visits, those times were extremely helpful and valuable. So I want to impress upon how important that was for us in our experience. And we learned from that how important it was to pay it back when we're asked to share experiences, to share stories, to share insights, that we're in a good place to be able to do that. And that kind of motivates me to participate in kinds of discussions we're having today. So paying it forward is very important, and there's a wealth of resources out there to help you in the work to get to ratification. For the Tla'amin experience, our ratification experience was, I think intense is a really good word to describe it. It was 12 years ago. I remember very clearly. There's a ratification date that we had set, and we had geared all of our efforts to being ready for that vote date, that people would show up to the polling stations and vote for or against our final agreement. And I think we're at a point where it was for the community to decide, and it was up to the community to make the decision about whether we're going to approve a final agreement or not. The environment was really tense. There was a real strong group of support for our Tla'amin final agreement. There's a real strong anti-treaty voice in the community. And there was a group of undecideds in our community. The vote date we had all looked forward to for such a long time. That day was a story in itself. We actually had a blockade for that vote date. There was community members that rallied to stop the vote from happening. There was pickup trucks that were backed up against the doors of our polling station, preventing the vote from taking place. So in the moment, we were not really sure what to do with that, or how to handle or manage our way through the what we were faced with. But the short story was the vote did not happen on that date, on that scheduled date. We regrouped a little, put some thought into what, our next steps would be. So that story brings us down a path of bringing us to the courts, an application for an injunction to have that blockade removed, a court approving that injunction application, and a new vote date was established. There was a police presence at that reset vote date. There was law enforcement on the ground trying to keep peace for the sake of allowing our vote to proceed. It was very intense. It was a very intense time. And when I think back on it, it was probably the most intense time that our community has ever been through to make a decision about whether we're going to approve a treaty or not to accept or approve a treaty. And we had to just trust, the outcome of that process to direct where what the outcome is going to be. So the outcome of that process was an approval. Our Tla'amin voters voted to approve a final agreement. The approval threshold was very, very narrow, very, very tight. I had to go back because it's been like 15 years to look at some numbers. In that vote, there were 615 members enrolled to vote. The approval threshold was 50% plus one of those enrolled voters. So our approval threshold was 309. We needed 309 voters to vote in favor for the vote to pass. So we needed 309. The vote outcome was 318. So 9 votes over the threshold to approve the treaty. And it was very, very intense work to get to those to that approval. So there was 318 that voted in favor. There were 235 that voted against. In the mix, there was 61 voters who did not show up at the polls to vote at all. They didn't vote yes, or they didn't vote no. But those 61 that did not show up, I think, are really important to factor into your ratification work. Like, not showing up to the polls is an impact in itself. Like, you need all of those votes to get over the threshold. So that day was very, very, very intense. There was celebration, I would like to describe it as a respectful celebration. The people that worked so hard to get to that point had managed to make it over a finish line, a very important threshold for our community. So there was relief, there was excitement, there was celebration, but we're also, had to be mindful that it was a really, really powerful decision, or a big decision, and you have to be respectful for the people that voted against the treaty. We had to carry on. There was a life beyond that vote date where we had to be building as a community, and that's so important. So I think some of the things that we had to learn was how to work through disagreement. It's okay for people to have to not agree with one another, and we had to find a way to be respectful through that disagreement. And it was very, very, very difficult times, but I also think it was a time of growth. And I think we had to dust ourselves off, stand ourselves back up, and find a way to move forward with our community growth. And And I think it was a point of tremendous change for our community. Like, we survived that ratification day. We landed on our feet and were able to carry out the work to move forward. From there, the ratification date, I think, is important to think about the perceptions for what that day is about. I think a lot of our community people thought of it as the finish line. It was the point that we were, once it's done, we're finished. The work is done. I think it's important to know that's the work isn't done. That's the day the work begins. It truly is the day the work begins. It's like life changes. There's a whole new set of responsibilities that come into play that we just weren't in the cards for us before that. There's lawmaking work that has to unfold. There's planning work that needs to be carried out. We find ourselves in a place where our land base has changed, it grows significantly. Our financial resources change, it grows significantly. There is plans that need to be established for how we manage those lands, how we manage those resources. Self-government becomes a real thing. Self-government is something different than life under the Indian Act. It's about being in a position where we make our own decisions about land management, our own decisions about financial management. We make our own rules about how we elect our government. We create the election laws, government laws, a whole new arena of laws. And that process in itself is so new, and it's so different from the world we experienced before our treaty. We did our work according to the Indian Act. And it's such a shift to be in a place outside of the Indian Act, be beyond it. And to me, that's one of the highlights, I guess, of change. What happens after your treaty is ratified or after you survive that ratification? I think there's a whole, I don't know, mindset that we need to grow through to realize we're now in charge of our own destiny. Like, we can't be, I don't know, looking to an Indian agent to be making decisions for us anymore. It's in our own court, to be making our own plans and growing up to the point where we're making our own decisions. So that's so, I guess, significant in, I guess, finding our way through, changes from pre-treaty. So that's it's a huge change. And for those tables that seeing Quocksister get some Kalim vote dates coming up, ratification dates, I'm really, really excited for you. And I really, really wish you well. Like, and really sincerely cross my fingers that you have a positive outcome. For Tla'amin, we're about 11 years after effective date now. And I've had, I don't know, I've seen changes in our world from the point where our treaty was approved. I've seen like amazing construction changes. There's physical change visible in the community. There's new buildings. There's for recreation, for government, for childcare. There's recreation facilities for young people and adults. There's construction of new homes, people building homes, subdivisions in our community. There's employment changes. And I heard a really amazing number, like about 6 months ago. Like, I was told in the last 2 years, there's been over 200 new hires, like in our community. There's business opportunities that change, that the playing field changes, and I think for the better. It's a huge contrast to imagine where we were under the Indian Act 12 plus years ago to where we are today. It's night and day. I can't ever imagine wanting to be in that Indian Act world ever. It's like growing up in a dysfunctional home. You don't want to be there. Like you want a life that you're that you can build. And I think we've managed to get to that point. There's a lot of work like in play. There's a lot of work still to be carried out. But I think the environment that we find ourselves in is it's a much better place than where we were before our final agreement. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we did to prepare, I guess, for that ratification vote. Information sessions are important. Community-wide information sessions where everybody's invited to attend and encouraged to attend. That approach captures, some good segment of the community. But there are parts of the community that just aren't comfortable in that type of environment. So we try to diversify and find other ways to try and reach people. Written materials is important. Pamphlets that contains information about plans, about governance, about finance. Pamphlets that are available for people to read. They can take them home and read at their own pace. There was focus group sessions that we did. I remember some of the work was about creating a spreadsheet. I remember an old school Excel spreadsheet, just listing every community member on that sheet and trying to make sense out of a whole range of information categories, like age categories, like birth dates, male, female categories, education levels, marital status. We try to find ways to create groups or find groups within our membership that we could reach out to and do focus groups. I remember some of the surprising outcomes were groups that really jumped out at me were like young moms. I remember being one of the I think one of the most impactful groups to reach, because in Treaty we're talking about a change in our future, making plans for land available to build homes, resources available to put towards education, jobs available going down the road. And I think the young moms were in that mindset where that was important. And there was a really engaging, dialogue that took place like within that group that just wasn't in play with some of the other groups. I remember youth groups being so impactful. There was a term that was coined, I think we called that group treaty babies. From the time that we entered into the treaty process, there were newborns along the way. And when it came to our vote date, those newborns were of age to be voting in our ratification vote. And those treaty babies were a really, really powerful voice in making decisions to go forward. There was a lot of debate about voting yes. There's a lot of debate about voting no. And I remember just the real clear message about coming from our youth. We can decide for ourselves. We're old enough that, to vote as we want to. And there's actually dialogue within the groups themselves coming up with their own outcome. There were family dinners that we organized. We encouraged families to organize amongst themselves. We supported dinner meetings where we could talk about treaty, and sometimes we had packaged things that we wanted to talk about, our team wanted to talk about. There are other times there the families themselves, were encouraged to ask or focus wherever they felt the focus where their interests were. So in a lot of ways, we had to want it to be reactive, to the questions that were asked of us. We arranged travel. We went out of our local area. We had population members in Vancouver, Victoria, south of the border, Tacoma, Washington, Tulalip. Historically, some of our members migrated south of the border. I think it was about summer work picking berries, and people stayed. and we have quite a large, not a large, but parts of our community living south of the border now. We did land tours, boat tours were the most popular for Tla'amin. Our land selection area is largely waterfront properties, or waterfront land. That's probably not a surprise. We're Coast Salish people. Our history is on the ocean, and our so water, access to the water is very important to us. So we did boat tours where we were able to get, I don't know, 12, 20 people on a big boat and cruised along the coast, and that gave us some time to talk to people, about the land base and about other parts of our treaty. We did website information, just putting information up onto websites people could access to gain access to information that way. We did videos. We recorded community members speaking, just being asked their thoughts about different aspects of the treaty. And that became so hugely valuable to us. That wasn't just our same speakers over and over and over that get out and talk to the community. I think it's important to have different voices and different perspectives and a range of different speakers talking about areas that were important to them. Sometimes it was lands, sometimes it was fish, sometimes it was our Tao, our law. Sometimes it was about future for our youth. So those were important for us. What else did we do? So just talking about ratification and our experience, I think just some of the highlights, I guess, that I would like to share would be one of the key highlights, I think, was misinformation. When it comes to the vote date, people are showing up to the polling stations and they're voting with information, with their own ideas of what the treaty is about. And one of the highlights I recall was there was a lot of misinformation leading up to the vote date. So I think just trying to deal with that as much as you possibly can. Some of the misinformation pieces were things like we're losing access to our land, we're losing access to programs and services. We're going to be paying taxes that we can't afford. There's not enough fish, which isn't misinformation, but the treaty provisions on fish were really, really, really poor. So, but it was part of the fabric, I guess, of what makes the whole treaty. So I think that misinformation was one of the highlights from it, and deal with that as much as you can, getting as much accurate information out into the community, really encouraging people to ask questions about the treaty. I remember once the vote date was set, there were parts of the community that suddenly took an interest. Like were coming to sessions where they would not before. And I think that vote date trigger was a good thing for that. People came out. But when they're coming out, there was part of that, I guess, misinformation conversation. Like, we're not sharing enough information in the community. We're not reaching out to the community. We're not making enough effort to reach everybody in the community. So I think it's important to document your communication efforts, like to convey, we've had information sessions all along the way. There's been invitations out to members to participate. There is reaching out to the community and really trying to change the narrative in that for pushing forward with a ratification date. I think pushing to the ratification date is important. We need to have those dates and we need to be pushing to them. But I think there's a dynamic that shapes up in that the more you push, the more resistance you get for the push. So I think that's just part of the mix of preparing for that ratification date. Another highlight, I guess, is to talk about expectations of what the treaty means. I think inside of our community, there was an expectation that a finished agreement would solve all of our problems, and that if the treaty provisions fell short of solving all of our problems, we should reject the treaty. So I think it's a lot of the work is about just changing that mindset. The treaty won't solve all of our problems. There's work that needs to continue, and there's work that will be ongoing beyond that approval date. I think trying to change. I think of it as changing a mindset, changing a narrative, in that treaty provides a whole range of tools that we didn't have access to before. It's a whole new range of lawmaking authorities. There's new resources that come into the equation. And I think the mindset is about, are we better off with those new resources? Can we build from those resources something that's better than what we have today? And I think Mark used that term, nation building. And I think that's so important. Like, we don't come into it always with that mindset of, assembling the resources that we need to build something going forward. Like, not everyone is in that mindset of building a nation. I think some people look at it as, we need a finished package delivered to us, and it's just not that at all. Like, we have to build it ourselves, and we have to focus on the resources that we have to work with to build it. For us, I think one of the key changes that we hammered on a lot was about the Indian Act. Kind of really beat up the Indian Act, saying we were never meant to be living underneath an Indian Act, and we really wanted to, get people thinking about, why would we choose to stay under an Indian Act? Like, voting no to a treaty is basically another way of saying we prefer to live under the Indian Act, and we try to contrast what life outside of the Indian Act would look like versus life within the Indian Act. And I think that resonated. I think people really were receptive to looking at those changes, those contrasts. And I think, I would still hammer on that same message, today. I think our life in Tla'amin is much better than it was before treaty. So there's so much to talk about, and I think I've hit the points that I wanted to, and look forward to any questions or any thoughts that people might want to talk about. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Roy. I always appreciate how you can synthesize things in such a good way and hit on so many points. That was just really fantastic. So many great points that you made and brought forward. That whole pay it forward, I think, is really important. And that's what we're doing here. Modern treaty nations step forward. Like I say, all I had to do was pick up the phone and ask all of my friends that are presenting here today, would you share some information? And immediately people said yes, they would make time to do that. And we all benefited from those who came before us, and we've become a real treaty family. I keep saying that, and I see that, you know, expanding through the new treaties that are coming up and the ratification that's coming up now. So that's really key, you know, and especially new communities that are coming up. You're not alone. You know, Roy points out there, I think 11 years into their treaty now, and that's the last one that was signed. So I see this as, you know, really hope that there's going to be that next group that's going to join that family and continue to show how well this works and how communities and regions benefit from First Nations taking on self-government and being in charge of our own destinies. You did talk a bit, Roy, about the ratification process, and I think your treaty and ours, it was really, the message is really a no vote is a no vote. So if you had enrolled and didn't vote, that would count against us. And I think that's one of the good things that have come out of recent negotiations, is that's no longer the case, which is really positive. The ratification threshold isn't as high as it was for ours. And I think that, you know, the fact that we've got living treaty agreements, really, that stands to reason that we shouldn't have that kind of a threshold. So appreciated that bit of a reminder. The healing of community is really important. You know, we really need to, at the end of the day, realize that we're family and work together to, you know, once the decision is made, to help our communities to come along. And I think, Roy, that's something that I'm sure everyone would like to explore a little bit more at some point. The importance of the youth demographic really jumped out at me, as exactly the same in our community. For those that were sitting on the fence, the older aunties and uncles and the grandparents who were really afraid of what this change might be, when their grandchildren stood up with their great grandchildren on their hips and said, I want this for my child. I don't want my child to grow up under the Indian Act. I want to be free. That, I think, is what won the vote for us, when people saw that the young people really wanted this and that they saw a lot of hope and change in their communities. So thank you very much for raising that. And the last point that I would just raise is you gave a great segue, and Chief Commissioner, I know, has got her ears on. That's the next forum that needs to be had. People are asking for it. You know, how does it work once you've ratified? There's a ton of work before you get to effective date. And as you said, on effective date, it's really day one of moving forward and starting to use those tools in treaty to rebuild our communities. So just fantastic background information, Roy, and also to Mark and Melissa. What a great panel. Thank you all so much for sharing.